And in for the touchdown goes Miles Sanders, his 6th of the season.
Mills gets the snap. Mills looking. Mills scrambles out to the right side. Davis throws right side of the end zone. Caught by Chris Moore. Touchdown, Houston!
Covering Thursday Night Football live, the Dynasty Nerds on Bettor Sports Network.
All right, welcome back into the Dynasty Nerds Show. We are back on another beautiful Thursday night, and I didn't know this game was going to be like this. I'll be completely honest. I had a lot of stuff going on today, and I'm at my brother-in-law's house, and I'm helping him put up this stone on his wall and blah, 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 blah. So I get back home with about 40 minutes to spare. I'm washing up, cleaning up, and I'm like, I got to catch up on the stats of this game and what's going on in the game. And this game's 14-14. We're past the halfway point in the game. It's still 14-14. We're talking about an undefeated Philadelphia team going up against one of the lowliest franchises in the NFL right now, the Houston Texans. And the Texans missing their top two receivers in Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins. Still getting it done. Still making it happen. Still getting it done. Very, very impressive so far from these Houston Texans. The resiliency. Lovie Smith hasn't playing well. Lovie Smith hasn't playing really well. So welcome back, guys. Welcome to the Dynasty Nerd Show. And look, we had so much fun the past few weeks. And one of the best things was we've had tons of trade questions. And I know we're at that time of year where we get a lot of trades in your fantasy football leagues. So feel free to put all of those trades in the chat. I'm going to do my best to get to as many of them as we can. We have two awesome guests on. We got our boy Dennis Bennett back. Of course, he's going to be on in the 11 o'clock hour. But at 10:15, Andrew Harbaugh. That's right, Andrew Harbaugh. This guy is a savant when it comes to all things college football. We're going to be taking a quick early look at the 2023 class. The reason being is when we're making all of these trades, sometimes picks are involved. We need to know what we're getting ourselves into with this 2023 class. Andrew Harbaugh is going to be able to help us out with that. It's going to be fantastic. Better Boss says everyone but Houston rooting for the Phillies, everyone but Philly rooting for the Texans. That's pretty accurate. That's pretty accurate. And my boy Gator. Gator's back. We almost put an APB out for Gator last week. There were many people in the comments worried about Gator, hoping he was okay. He's fine, guys. He's back. Gator's back. We'll be talking to him, I'm sure, at least once on the show tonight. You never know with Gator how things are going to go, but we'll be talking to him at least once, catching up on what he was doing last week, where he was. And while I'm watching, Damian Pierce is just running all over the place. This guy, this rookies, love rookies, love the young kids, love the young kids. All right, so let's start off with a question tonight. Everyone that's in the chat, I want an answer on this. I put this on Twitter. What would that have been? Yesterday, I believe. If you are in a dynasty league and one quarterback and you cannot pick Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase, but you can pick any other three players to have on a team, any other three, regardless of position, whatever. Just can't be Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. What three players are you taking? And I got hundreds of responses on this. And it was really, really fascinating to see how different people wanted to build their teams. You know, traditionally in one quarterback, you don't have quarterback ranks as highly, but we saw a lot of Josh Allen in there. We saw a lot of Mark Andrews in there as well at the tight end position. So it's really interesting. Not as many running backs. Some people had running backs, but not as many running backs overall. So really curious. So if you're in a dynasty league, you can pick any three players in a 1 QB league, not named Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, who you take and put in the comments right now. Better Boss saying Allen, Taylor, and Waddle. Saw a lot of Waddle, a good amount of Allen as well. Running back was a little bit all over the place. Saw some Jonathan Taylor, saw some Breece Hall, even saw Bijan Robinson which is slightly cheating, but we'll be talking about the 2023 class here and why this guy is already getting this much love. My boy Edward, the bookends. Man, he does a fantastic job on the Monday night show. Every time I tune in, it's always an enjoyment. I like having it on while I'm watching the game. If you watch this show, but you do not watch on Monday nights, you're missing a great experience during the game, getting to listen to Edwards, the Monday night rants. It's fantastic. Make sure you check that out each and every Monday night during the Monday night football game. So, yeah, put in the chat, what 3 players would you want? Now, I'll remind people of the question as we go, but I thought that was a really, really interesting thought on, is it, because when we look at it, my initial thought is most people were going to take what would be roughly the ADP of the next 3 players available. The hard part right now is the ADP is kind of out the window, right? Outside of those top 2 receivers, there's a really big tier of receivers. Right now at running back, there's almost no consensus on who the top backs are. Some people like to build around quarterbacks in 1QB, some don't. Some like to have that elite tight end. Some would just rather keep kind of streaming the position and play the matchups. So it's really, really interesting to me. As I'm talking, A.J. Brown continuing his ridiculous streak from last week where he put up 3 touchdowns, put up another one here. That puts the Eagles up 20-14 pending the extra point. So let me know what 3 players you would like. Real quick, I want to touch on a few of the injuries so far because we had a couple injuries come down today that really are going to be affecting things. And we're starting to see this year. We started off the year pretty good, right? Didn't have a lot of injuries during camps. Didn't have a lot during preseason. Whereas the year before we had like 3 or 4 before the season even started of big names that were important for fantasy. We didn't have that this year. And we even got, 3 or 4 weeks into the season before we really started seeing a lot of guys get banged up. But these past few weeks have been absolutely brutal, specifically at the wide receiver position. Just found out today, Michael Thomas done for the season with a toe injury. Rashad Bateman, he has a Liz Frank, so we're not going to get him for the rest of the season as well. 2 receivers that were expected to be kind of wide receiver 2s for your fantasy football team, or very worst wide receiver 3s. Not going to get them for the rest of the season. That's brutal. We found out last week, Jamar Chase, we're going to be missing him for a while. That really hurts. Deebo Samuel's been missing time with an injury. Even Cooper Kupp had an ankle injury. We're expecting him back, but who knows? I mean, it's the NFL. These injuries, you never know how they're going to play out. So it's really fascinating, but tough for your fantasy football teams to be able to continue churning out wins when you're missing player after player after player. And we were already starting to see that at the running back position where we're losing more and more guys as well. And then we just have a lot of guys underperforming this year, specifically at the running back and quarterback positions. We're seeing a lot of bigger name players that were underperforming. It's been a tough year for fantasy football. And even one of the youngest, most exciting players in the league, Kyle Pitts, really disappointing this year. So if you're out there, if you are 6-1, if you're 7-0, congratulations. It's a tough year to be able to do that. Obviously, some good skill involved there, but maybe a little bit of luck too, because you've been avoiding all of those injuries. Oh, here's the man. Here he is. Gator is back. Let's talk to him real quick before we get Andrew on here in about 5 minutes, because I want to know where he was last week. He was missing in action, so we got to find out where he was gallivanting to and what he's up to. Gator, what's up, buddy?
Man, I was enjoying the beautiful sun of Turks and Caicos.
Woo! Okay.
I will tell you this. I know you're a married man,
right?
And when you get the chance, you take your wife on a nice little vacation and go on down there to Turks and Caicos. In October, late October, the weather was like 80 degrees as a low.
Oh, wow. Beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely beautiful. People are wonderful.
Were you on some sort of resort or something?
Yeah, we did a resort this time,
Okay.
all inclusive resort. So it was absolutely wonderful. But man, the locals are, just they give. I mean, they're beautiful people down there, and I loved every second of it. The only thing that was bad about it was the horrible internet connection.
Oof. That's
You
tough.
know, yeah, for a guy like me, it's like I don't have no internet. For the first day or so, it was like okay, but then after about the first 48 hours, I was like, okay, I
Starting to
need
get the
internet.
itch.
I gotta get internet. What's going on with my teams?
Did you get to watch much football last week or no?
Oh yeah, we had local channels out of Miami. To be honest, it was crazy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was I got to watch a little bit of football. I didn't get to watch Thursday night, of course, because
Sure.
they don't have Amazon Prime down there. But I watched a little bit on Sunday, so it was nice. It was nice. It was nice.
Did you come back feeling recharged, refreshed, that kind of stuff?
No, I came back a little vindictive because I'm like, I want to go back now. I didn't even want to come back, to be quite honest. If it wasn't for the internet, I might have stayed. They gave me a 30-day visa, and I really thought about extending that visa out. To be quite honest, it was awesome.
So if you're ever gone for extended period of time, we don't have to worry about something bad happening to you. We just know you just moved, like you're just gone now.
Yeah, I will have to get a better cell plan.
There you go.
But I did get a little bit of tan, so I'm a little bit tanner than I was.
You're making me look real pale over here.
Well, I did that to Chase on Wednesday night when I got on with Chase, and he was like, "Dude, you tan." I'm like, "No, you're just white."
just pasty over here. Just pasty.
Yeah.
How are your fantasy teams looking at this midway point?
Well, I really I have one Debbie team, with some of the nerds that I was looking really, really good. I was on the brink of going 8-0.
Ooh.
In a Debbie now. So, and then Joe Burrow decided, I'm going to get sacked 5 times. I'm not gonna throw the ball for more than a touchdown. So I lost by 3.4 points.
That's tough.
It was horrible. It was horrible. I was sitting here Monday night and I was like, I'm in this. I'm really fixing to go 8-0. Oh,
then my Browns did that to you. I'm sorry.
Well, it wasn't your Browns. It was one Brown. It was Myles Garrett.
Well, he is a freak of nature.
He is a freak of nature.
Yeah,
how was your week? I didn't get to talk to you last week. So how was your week?
It was good, man. It was a good week. Overall, the fantasy teams, especially, you always have 3 or 4 teams that you like, you're more invested in than the rest.
Oh,
like you like all your teams, you're invested in all your leagues to an extent, but you have those few leagues that you're like, if I win in these leagues, I can lose in the rest and I'll still be happy because I won in these leagues. So that's been the nice part for me this year is most of the ones that I'm like really keyed in on, most of the ones I'm really focused in on, I'm doing really, really well. So that's good to see. My home league is one of them. I'm 6-2 and I'm sitting in first place at 6-2. So I feel pretty good about that. And even, dodging some injuries and stuff like that. I had Javonte on that team and, Jonathan Taylor as well, who's been in and out and might be out again this week. We'll have to see. He's missed 2 practices in a row, so that doesn't look great. We'll monitor the Friday practice report, but all those things considered, things are looking pretty good.
Is that a Braves hat you're wearing?
It is a Braves hat. It's look at that, Twins.
We are twinning.
What are the odds? See, the thing is, I'm not even necessarily a Braves fan. I'm a fan of the Guardians, but I was working.
Your brain is actually outweighing your heart right now.
That's probably what it is. Probably what it is. Actually, I have a lot of like random Major League Baseball team hats. I love like the flat bill hats. It's my go-to, especially like I was mentioning in the beginning of the show. I was working a bunch, like leading right up into this, so I didn't have time to like shower and like get everything good. I'm like, oh, it's a hat night. There we go. So that's more what happened than anything else. But Gator, I am about to have Andrew on, but let's touch base again a little bit later in the show.
Yeah, I'll hit you back up a little bit later. Hey guys, thanks for looking out for me last week. I am alive. I'm here.
He's still alive. Gator the legend. Appreciate you, buddy.
Appreciate you.
Man, love talking to that guy. Love talking to Gator. Glad he's doing well. Glad he had an enjoyable vacation. But with that, we're going to be getting Andrew Harbaugh on here momentarily. He's going to be coming on talking all things 2023 class. So when I mentioned it a second ago, but when we're making these trades, we got to know what we're trading for when we trade for picks, because some years a first round pick, an early second round pick, crazy valuable. Other years, not so much. So we want to know what we're getting into. We want to know what players we want to start watching, which one we start looking tape at, all of that kind of stuff. So as soon as we get him on here, we'll be discussing all things college football, all things 2023 class, and that'll be awesome. But real quickly, before he does jump on, we were talking a little bit about the injuries and all the wide receivers, and I didn't mention Jonathan Taylor. I am starting to worry about that situation just a hair. I still think he is a fantastic player and somebody that I would be looking to acquire in my fantasy leagues, whether that's redraft or dynasty. I think better days are ahead. But this ankle injury has been frustrating, right? We've seen several weeks in a row now where he hasn't quite put up the numbers that we were hoping. He's in and out of the game with injuries. Honestly, at this point, I'd rather him sit until he's 100% ready to go. I really would, because if he's out there, I'm going to start him, but I just don't know what I'm getting out of him really. And Deion Jackson, in his absence, performed really well. And with Nyheim Hines out of the picture now in Buffalo, which we'll touch on that trade in a little bit, but with him gone as well, it's going to be the Deion Jackson show. And we saw that earlier in the season, and he had the best game by a running back for the Colts this year. Better than any of Jonathan Taylor's games. Better than anything Jonathan Taylor has done since like the midpoint last season. So at this point, I would much rather just have Jonathan Taylor sit, get healthy. All right, while we're talking 3rd and 9, Texans are in the red zone at roughly the 12-yard line. And they've put together a real nice drive, but it looks like it's going to stall out. And I'm guessing field goal here. 4th and 9 is a long one to try to convert. So the Texans are not going away. It's kind of like, this is a little crass, but have you ever picked your nose, right? All of us have done it at some point. Have you ever picked your nose and then you try to subtly flick the booger off your finger, but what it does is it just sticks to the finger you're trying to flick it off with. So then you're just it's sticking to different fingers. That's the Texans right now. They're not great, but they're just sticking around. They're being annoying. They're hanging in there. And I love to see it, as when you have these teams that are down and out teams, don't have a lot of hope for this year, you want to see some fight in them. So I'm really excited about that. Gator asking, is JT a tradable player now? At one point this offseason, he was going for 2+ firsts. Seems like the price should be down. So it depends on what you're looking for, right? Are you looking to trade, acquire him, or get rid of him? Because I think if you're getting rid of him, I think now is probably not the best time, because his value is depressed quite a bit at the moment. And we expect that better days are ahead. If you're trying to buy, though, I think this is a fantastic time to buy Jonathan Taylor. I think you could get away with a first and another solid piece. Now you can't get away with it being 111, 112, a really late pick. But if you're doing something like a 105 projected, somewhere in there, and then you give a really nice piece on top of that. So let's say it's a first, and I'm trying to think of a good piece that would be a nice fit with it. Maybe Amon-Ra. Man, that might be a little steep, but probably in that ballpark. An Amon-Ra St. Brown and a first could probably get you Jonathan Taylor right now. That might even be a little bit steep. You might be able to get him for a little bit less than that, but I think that's roughly the price tag. Maybe a Devontae Smith and a first might be a little more reasonable for what you would have to pay right now. But yeah, if you're looking to acquire Jonathan Taylor, Claypool in a mid first, maybe Claypool might get that done. It depends on, some people are really high on him in the offense with the Bears there. Other people not quite as high. So you might be able to get him there. All right, looks like we're still waiting on Andrew for a little bit. So we'll go to our next topic for now. And whenever he gets here, we'll kind of just pivot from this topic, talk college fantasy football and the 2023 class, and then we'll come back to this topic. But wanted to touch on some quarterbacks at this point in the year. Tua Tagovailoa. He's playing really well. Now, you could say that's the scheme. You can say that's the receivers. You can say a lot of different things. But regardless, this is looking legitimate, and I don't think he's going away. I think he's going to continue to be this quarterback that is the driver of this beautiful, sexy car that is the Miami Dolphins offense. I think he's going to be the driver of it. I don't know that he is the reason this is happening, but he is doing everything right to make sure that it keeps happening. So with that, we're going to pause there, and we're going to bring in Andrew Harbaugh. Andrew is a savant when it comes to college fantasy football, college players, their values, evaluations. The guy knows his stuff. Andrew, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing good, Garrett. I had a little bit of technical difficulties, but it's on brand for me. So the rest of the night will be smooth.
Hey, it's all good. Isn't the first time, won't be the last.
100%.
Andrew, so there's a lot of questions I have for you. But first one, let's go big picture, all right? When looking at the 2023 class, this is a rookie class that we've been talking about, we've been looking at, we've been evaluating, we've been hyping up for years now. At the midpoint of the college season, how's this class looking? Is it living up to expectations? Is it underwhelming you? How do you feel about this 23 class?
It's funny. I tinker with watch lists, big boards, rankings more than I should, to a fault. And I think this year I have tinkered more than ever. And it's not because it's so much talent rich, but there's so many tough evaluations this year. So the top end, like the Michael Mayers, the CJ Strouds, the Bryce Youngs, the Bijans, those are all going to be easy the whole way through. It's figuring out guys 2 through 10, 10 or 11 through 15 is where it's really going to be tough, and it's going to make or break these classes. Like biggest ones, quarterbacks, like we had 5, 6, 7 of those before the season where you're like, going to be a loaded class. This is going to be 5 again, just like we thought we were going to have with Trey Lance, Mac Jones in that year, and Trevor Lawrence. And it's really tapered off. And it really is a 2-horse race in my mind. The NFL is trying to force feed us a third one by all reports. But I think the last couple of weeks of college are going to be huge. And I think all-star games are going to be bigger than ever this year. I think the combine is going to make or break a ton this year. It's going to be one of those things where we're really not going to know it. And I sound like a broken record every year until these guys have landing spots. Like I was so excited before the year, but now this is turning into another landing spot class, unfortunately.
All right, so let's break down a few of the specifics. And Matthew Bruning, Sports Fanatic MBS, who's better, Bryce Young or CJ Stroud? Now, you said those were going to be 2 of the easier evaluations, but if you're on the clock and you have to take one of them, which one right now would you take without knowing the landing spot?
I've been riding CJ Stroud as my QB1 until about a month ago.
Okay.
And then I saw Bryce Young, not even a month ago, a couple weeks ago. I watched Bryce Young against Tennessee. I've watched him against Texas. The Texas game really spoke a lot to him. He's going to be smaller. He's going to measure much. I bet he's 5'10", 5'11" in that range.
Well, did you see the picture with him and Kyler Murray next to each other?
No, I did not.
Kyler looked taller in the picture.
Well, that's just the baseball in him.
I'm just saying. It was an interesting. I'll send it over to you, but I was fascinated when I saw that.
So what I will say is for Bryce with me, that's made the difference is, and I tweeted this out, and I can't remember the exact wording I had on at the time, but the bottom line is my thought process is Bryce is different compared to all the other smaller quarterbacks where they had to rely on the backup ability of their legs to kind of bail them out of plays and situations and stuff like that. Bryce Young, on the other hand, is a uber talented passer, all the arm talent in the world, and the mental processing is through the roof. I mean, you have a Nick Saban quarterback, so you know that's going to be there. That's never been a question for anybody he coaches. It's just coming in a smaller package. But like I said, the arm talent's not lacking. I like him more than I did Tua at this point. So, I mean, just to get that discourse going because everyone's going to get ahead of it, way more than Mac Jones. But yeah, and I'm not saying Stroud's bad, but I think if there's teams drafting 1 and 2, like if the draft were today, it's Detroit and Houston. I like either one of those guys at either spot. I think they'd be fine. I think Bryce Young would do better with what Detroit's doing, obviously, because that offense is as bad as the team is. The offense is pretty funny with Jared Goff, but yeah, without knowing landing spots, I'm still taking Bryce Young just because I'm taking what's between the ears at this point. I really, really like.
Makes sense. Yeah, a little bit more athletic too. Stroud, a little bit more of a traditional pocket passer.
Yep.
I'm going to hang in there. After that, you mentioned it. We thought for a while there we could have 5-6 guys going in the first round. Things have kind of thinned out. The one player that is still hanging around, and if anything, we've seen his stock boost a little bit, is Hooker from Tennessee. Any thoughts on Hooker?
Yeah, I actually just watched Hooker's game against Alabama last night. I watched that game as a whole. You know how it is. You watch the game live, and then you go back and you watch it 5 more times, especially with those two teams playing.
Sure.
Because there's always going to be players that you want to evaluate. But with Hooker, I loved his decision-making, his calmness under pressure. Saban just makes college quarterbacks look like they should be playing peewee half the time. And Hooker was able to handle all that very well. And as much as people are going to hold this against him in the draft process, I think him being 25 helps in that sense where he's been around it all. He's been in way tougher situations when he was at Virginia Tech. Now he's at Tennessee, and that offense just scores points. He has all the receiver help in the world. That offensive line's great in front of him. But even when it broke down, Hooker has no problem rolling out, stays calm. What I love most is he doesn't usually try to go between the tackles when he's trying to make a play. He kind of tries to extend it a little bit, makes all of his progressions sometimes twice over, it seems, because he takes so long to process at times. But his receivers help him out extending their routes. And at the same time, I think in that game, I think he had 58 rushing yards. So, I mean, he's not going to be putting up crazy numbers, but at the same time, it's a nice little boost. But it also is big because he stays alive and doesn't take a beating either.
Love it. Any other quarterback that you think has a legitimate shot to go first round, or is that it at this point?
I mean, Levis is going to go in the first round, whether people want him to or not. Yeah, I think he will. And I mean, there's people already saying that there's the NFL, from whatever I hear, already has him over Bryce Young. I, for the life of me, can't understand it, but I don't work for a team that has an opinion that matters. So it was funny. Before the season, I had some comps for players, and I watched Will Levis's 2021 season. It reminds me a ton of Daniel Jones. And then this year, it's kind of the same thing where it's just the accuracy is not that great. He plays hero ball a little too much for me. But at the end of the day, the NFL loves their traits, and you're going to have a team that's going to see the traits and they're going to bank on it. And it's their job and not mine. So I'll let them take the risk. And I just don't know what we see. And just making the comparison, Daniel Jones is kind of turning into something of an NFL quarterback. We don't really know what. Sure. I think that system that Dable has helps him. I think Levis, for all the quarterbacks, landing spot's going to be gigantic. But I still am not a believer at this point.
Well, while we've been talking, we saw the Eagles score another touchdown. Dallas Goedert got in the end zone here. And my producer telling me Levis puts mayonnaise in his coffee, though. You can't be a franchise quarterback and do that.
and he eats bananas with the peels on.
What?
Yep. Poor Alyssa Lang on the SEC network. She is I would put it up against anybody. She's the best sideline reporter, regardless pro or college, because when she covered Kentucky last year, she did both those things on the sideline just to make sure people understood. Apparently, the mayonnaise thing's not bad.
Really?
I'm gonna stick with my frozen Dunkin' French vanilla for now, but yeah, I don't think I'm gonna have Duke's mayo floating around in my morning caffeine drink.
I'll pass. Let's move positions here real quick. Bijan Robinson, at this point, everyone's clear 1-1 at the position, but there's a little bit of ambiguity after that. There's a strong push for maybe Gibbs as RB2. Would Jahmyr Gibbs be your RB2 as well, or do you have another guy there right now?
Yeah, Gibbs would be my RB2. Those are my 1 and 2 that before the season. I think they're going to be my 1 and 2 through the season, through the process. I love what both of them bring. Bijan reminds me a ton of Willis McGahee for the I can't believe I'm saying older fans, but Willis McGahee for me there. And then
like while in Miami, Willis McGahee?
Yes, Miami Hurricane, Buffalo Bill, Baltimore Raven, Willis McGahee. But Gibbs is so much fun where he was the best player at Georgia Tech, clearly. Now he goes to Alabama, that system. He's thriving there. You really saw him in the Texas game kind of break out, and he's had a couple more since then. And I think it's definitely those two at the top. And then from there, running back is, I think, super deep, but that's usually never good because that means guys are going to be forced to go to teams where they're going to be buried on a depth chart, and you know how it goes.
Yeah. So let's run through just a quick, we don't have to give a lot of information, but run through the names that people should at least be familiar with that might go in the first or early part of their second round of their rookie drafts.
Yeah, Zach Evans out of Ole Miss is one. He had a run, if you could look it up, last week. I saw that. He sent the 2 defenders to the shadow realm. It was hilarious because clear path out of bounds. And he says, no, I'm going to take these guys out before I cut back in. Another one is, of course, Sean Tucker. He has a track background at Syracuse. They're having a great season. He is a big part of that. Another one, Chase Brown, who's leading, I believe still, the NCAA in rushing out of Illinois. Blake Corum at Michigan is probably going to be another one that a lot of people like. He has a lot of touchdowns right now. Ran all over Penn State, was a big reason Michigan won that game. And then one that I'm kind of hearing could be hit or miss. Devon, if I'm saying his name wrong, I apologize. I'm not to the part of the year where I've got those down. But Devon Achane out of Texas A&M, he, again, just like Tucker, has a track background. He has the NFL lists as character issues. He got arrested for DWI in the offseason. NFL, I mean, they'll look past that at this point, I'm sure. But the point is, he's somebody that could be like a day 3 guy that could potentially be a rookie steal at some point, depending on landing spot. Very versatile guy, special teams receiver, running, whatever you need him to do, he'll do well. So,
love it. All right, wide receiver position. This was one where in the offseason, there was 2 guys everyone was talking about, Butte and Jackson Smith and Jigba, and things have kind of changed a little bit. The season hasn't quite gone as we expected for these players. What's the wide receiver position looking like now for 23? And is it strong compared to what we've seen over the past few seasons?
I think it can be. I think it's definitely not as strong as everyone thought coming into the year, but just like running back, it's kind of getting deeper as the season goes. As far as JSN and Butte famously had that week 1 game where it looked like he literally did not want to play against Florida State. It was horrible. And then on the flip side, everyone's still holding on to that game against Utah with Smith and Jigba, that we haven't been able to see him very healthy this year. But again, he could declare, and I think he'd be fine draft stock wise. But yeah, no, it's crazy. And then mine, Dennis, who will be on later, I remember in the Nerds Discord, I've liked Addison before the year. I've liked him through the year. He's just looked, he's somebody that has not plateaued. A lot of these receivers have plateaued, and he's really kind of kicked it into another gear. And he's really showcasing that he can be a probably an NFL team's number one receiver, depending on where he goes. If not, a very fantasy relevant 2 on a depth chart, maybe a 1 on your team. So, again, very top heavy, but there's a lot of talent at the receiver position.
Yeah, one guy that I ended up getting him on like all my C2Cs, all my Devi teams is Josh Downs from North Carolina. Smaller receiver, but man, he can move and he can run some good routes and get open. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, no, I definitely think he's somebody that I could see kind of being. He reminds me, not the production wise, but like he's somebody that could be plugged into an offense like Cooper Kupp is for the Rams, where all type of different receiver positions, probably thrives in the slot a little bit. But he has a big physical body, strong hands. He's able to high point the ball if he needs to. He's somebody that, again, I think could be in the top 5 receiver discussion, maybe even top 3 for some. But yeah, Josh Downs is definitely somebody that I love a lot. And I think, again, we're going to deep class. He'll be somebody that, as the testing process goes, you'll see him kind of gain some more steam too.
That makes sense. Gator asked about Quentin Johnson from TCU. What do you think about him?
I love Quentin Johnston. He reminds me so much of Mike Williams for the Chargers.
Ooh.
Both play really big. Both are deceivingly fast. Johnston had a very, very quiet year, and then he really broke out against Kansas when they needed him. Max Duggan's maybe becoming something of a quarterback to follow. Yeah. We don't really know. But I think the story there is Quentin Johnston's kind of lifting up Max Duggan as he lifts up himself. So, no, Johnston, I love physical traits for days, just gets open, attacks the ball in the air. That's my favorite thing with him. He's going to win your 50-50 balls. I think I saw today, or I heard today, he's, according to PFF, I think he's won 50% of his 50-50 balls, which is like well above average for them.
Sure.
So, yeah, I see a lot of Mike Williams in his game, and I think that would be something that fantasy people should love.
Love it. All right, Andrew, real quick before we get you out of here, anything else, any other player that you want to touch on, or anything that people drafting in 2023 or making trades for 2023 picks should know?
I would say try to keep it to round 1 and 2. If you're giving up big assets, obviously, try to get those ones back. I know that's like fantasy trades, dynasty trades 101, but don't be afraid to ask for the 3s, the 4s, the 5s, as like whenever you have a close trade and you're going back and forth with someone, be like, oh, can you just throw in a 4 just so I could feel a little, I love the line, so I could feel better about myself. So it's one of those things where, and maybe that's the old cell phone salesman in me.
There you go.
But no, I always try to get a little bit of extra topping there on top whenever you can. I think those are going to be the picks that can be make or breaks. Prime example, Dameon Pierce for some people was probably a 3rd or a 4th round rookie pick at some point. I think based on how that depth chart was looking early on, and then it went through camp, those are the guys you can get that kind of win camp battles, put some money. If you like betting, 3, 4s, and 5s all day.
There you go. Andrew Harbaugh. Andrew, where can the good people find you on the social medias, and anything you're working on that you want to plug right now?
Yeah, no, just I'm doing a lot of work for 33rd Team. I'm kind of behind the scenes there. Covering college football for Nittany Lions Wire, part of the USA Today wire system. And then obviously I'm posting some Devi reports and stuff like that on Twitter. You can find me there at Andrew Harbaugh _. So if you need to know how to spell Harbaugh, just like Jim and John, no relation, unfortunately. I don't get any better Christmas or holiday gifts.
All right, Andrew. Well, thanks for coming on and talking some college football with us, man.
Hey, appreciate it, Garrett. Have a good one.
Yep, we'll see you. All right, that was Andrew Harbaugh giving us a little insight to the 2023 class, some names to know, some guys to watch out for at those key positions. We are going to take a quick break. We'll get back here, and I'm sure we'll talk to Gator again at some point, and then we're going to have Dennis Bennett on, and we've got a whole slew of things to talk with him about. All right. Sounds like we're going to have to keep going. We are not going to break. I lied. I just sat here awkwardly where everyone got to watch me drink my water. But we will adapt and adjust just like we always do. So we were talking with Andrew about the 2023 class, and when you get into the point where you're making trades, and this is something we didn't get to touch on quite as much with Andrew, but right now we're at the point where you're evaluating your team, right? You're looking at, can I contend this year? Am I a legit threat in the playoffs to win a ship? Or am I going to like limp into the playoffs? Or, where is my team at? Am I at the point where I need to really take a hard look in the mirror because my team's really not that good? That's what we're looking at this point in the year. So, first of all, you have to be honest with yourself. If you're not able to do that, if you're not good at evaluating where you're really at, the Dynasty GM tool for Dynasty Nerds, if you have not checked that out, that is something I highly, highly recommend. There's a league analyzer. It'll tell you exactly where all your teams stand as far as being a contender and where all the teams stand as far as the overall dynasty value on your team. So highly recommend that. But time to look in the mirror, look and see what you got. If your team is not a legitimate contender, and when I say legitimate contender, not just one of these teams that I'm 3-4 and I think with one move I might be able to make it into the playoffs. We're not trying to make it into the playoffs. Fantasy football is kind of like the NBA. You never want to live in the middle because when you live in the middle, you miss out on a lot of those key big assets that you're going to get at the top of the draft. But you're never quite good enough to like win it all, but you're never bad enough to get those players. It's this awkward middle zone that you're living in. So if you find yourself there, that's when you want to start trading for these 23 picks. Take a look at your team. DeAndre Hopkins, he's playing fantastic right now. But if you're not winning games, he's a great guy to move on from. He's 30. He's not going to be playing forever. By the time your team is relevant, he probably won't be anymore. So it would be good to take a look at dealing him for some 23 assets. You could probably get a first and maybe even a second on top of it. So that would be a good player to look at. Really, any wide receiver over the age of 28, 29, they're on my trading block. I will absolutely put them on my trading block because there are teams that need those kind of players. They just might have lost Michael Thomas. They might be without Jamar Chase. They might be without Rashad Bateman. We've had a lot of injuries at the position. Running backs. I am willing to deal any running back on a non-contending team. Any running back. Jonathan Taylor, yep, I'm willing to deal him. Alvin Kamara, yep, willing to deal him. Even a younger guy, Kenneth Walker, yep, I'm willing to deal him because the shelf life for these running backs is so short. If you get 5, even 6 years out of a running back, you are thrilled. That's great. But most of these running backs, and Rich coined, Dynasty Rich from the Dynasty Nerds podcast, coined this term years ago. It's the hashtag 2 to 3 year window. Most of these running backs have a 2 to 3 year window where they can compete as a high end RB2 or an RB1. But most of them can't live in that range. There's outliers, there's exceptions, but most players cannot. So if I have a team where I am not competing, any and all running backs that are on my squad are available for trade. I'm not saying just give up your running backs, right? So make sure that you can retool with players that are going to have longevity. So the position that has the worst longevity is the running back position. If this is a super flex league, I'm absolutely looking to build around quarterbacks. I want those young quarterbacks that can sustain me for a long time because then you don't even have to worry about the position anymore. You can literally cross it off your list. So quarterback would be the first position I would build around. Next, you could go for tight ends, but really there's not many that you can build around right now. You have maybe 3, Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts, and maybe Dallas Goedert. He's played really well. He looks good in this offense this year. but there's not a lot of players at the tight end position you're going to build around. So if you're able to get one of those guys, cool. But otherwise, move on. Wide receiver, we mentioned some names, some guys to go after, but ultimately those picks, that's what you really want to go after. So just a word of advice on this 23 class. It is looking like a good class. There is some top end talent. There is some depth. This is a class that you want to invest in. Last year's class, there's some players that are panning out, but overall, there wasn't one that I was high on. And all of my nerd scores, and I've talked about my nerd scores before, they're tape grades, weren't that high for that class. This year, I'm anticipating these scores being pretty high because I like this class. I like a lot of the players. I think there's a lot of good things going on with this class. All right, let's get back into the quarterback discussion that we were having earlier. And at this point, too, Gator, if you're out there, because I don't think we're going to take a break. I think we're just going to roll right on through. We're having some technical issues, so we're just going to roll right on through till we get to Dennis. So, Gator, if you want to, look at that, man. He was ready at a moment's notice at the drop of a hat. Gator is that's why he's the man, guys. That's why he's America's sweetheart. That's why people love him. Gator, how you doing, buddy?
Good. America's sweetheart. I don't know about all that, but hey, it works for you. We need to get a segment. We got to talk to Better Boss about this. We got to get a G&G segment going.
Hey,
Jerry, what's up,
dude? I'm down. Say less.
So I wanted to go back for a second. I was actually hitting the call button whenever you were talking about it. Okay. Noticing whether you're going to rebuild or if you're a contender. Mm-hmm. And you can't look at your record. You can be 6-2 at this point, but you could have played all bottom end teams. Man, if you want to really know if you are a contender or if you are a pretender, go and look at like your total points and compare that to the rest of your league. If you're in a 12-man league and your points right now are 980, but you've got 3 dudes that are behind you that are sitting at 1,100, 1,200 points, you played the bottom end of your league. Yeah. You're not ready to contend. Because when you play those big dogs, you are definitely losing those games, and now you're 6-6. And you've done traded away your future thinking you're going to get it.
No, I'm with you, and I think that's a great way if you're not able to really, because I think that is something people have a hard time with, is being honest with themselves if they're actually contenders or not, because everyone wants to be a contender at this point in the year. Being a contender is fun. You want to be in it. You want to be making moves. You want to be playing in the playoffs. So, that's something that everybody wants right now. But realistically, in most leagues, there are at 4 at most contenders in your league, like legitimate contenders, not just I'll make the playoffs, but no, you could actually win your league. Now, it's fantasy football. Stupid things happen. Any team could accidentally win because, the stud team lost 3 guys due to injury the week you're playing them, and you never truly know. But we're going with the odds here, right? We're playing the odds. We're trying to give ourselves the best chance for success. And if you, like you said, if you have a schedule to where you have the least amount of points scored against you and the total points that you've put up are not that great, chances are you got lucky. Chances are you played the right team on the right week. You got to play against a team with a bunch of guys on bye or a bunch of guys injured or a team that just wasn't that good. Chances are when you get to those points where you're going to be playing the big dogs, it's probably not going to work out well for you. How many teams right now? Well, how many leagues do you play in, first of all, Gator?
Too many.
Under 15?
Oh, it's over.
Okay.
It's over. It's closer to like the 23, 24 mark.
Okay. All right. So on all of those leagues, what percentage would you say are contenders? What percentage would you say are middle of the road? And what percentage would you say are like rebuilding, types of teams?
Right. So I'm going to take out the 3 or 4 leagues that I'm in that are redraft because
sure. Yeah, that's completely different.
So just in Dynasty, I would say probably out of the, I'm going to call it 15, out of the 15, I'm probably a contender in 4
Okay.
and a rebuild in every other one. When I'm looking at it, and I know this is probably a dumb way to do it, but when I'm looking at it, I hate being that 5, 6, 17.
Oh, I totally agree with you.
I don't want to be that mid-tier team. So if I'm feeling like I'm going to be like 5, 6, 7, somewhere in that range, just outside of the playoffs, but I'm not, going to get that early pick, I'm going to go ahead and sell. I'm going to go ahead and sell, and I'm selling now. In fact, I just sold in a couple leagues. Like I just sold Dameon Pierce. I know tonight's hurting my feelings tonight, but I just sold Dameon Pierce for a Najee Harris in a second.
Wow, that's a good deal. I would take that deal as well. I know Pierce is playing really well and Najee's playing terribly, but we're looking at somebody that probably has a longer shelf life with Najee Harris because of the draft capital involved, compared to Dameon, who he's played really well, but we see it over and over and over again where these mid-round guys, unless they are truly just all pro type of guys, they end up getting replaced. So we'll see what happens with them. But I think you made the safer bet there.
Yeah. So, I mean, to answer your ultimate question there, I'm probably, contending in 10%.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm either rebuilding or trying to just build capital. And I'm not just looking at 23. I've already started investing and trying to snag up 24 first.
And I can't blame you at all, because just from one team, and I'm biased as an Ohio State fan, but Marvin Harrison Jr. looks fantastic. Travion Henderson is one of the more talented running backs in college football right now. Then you have guys like Braylon Allen from Wisconsin. You have a lot of young quarterbacks. I really like Drake May from North Carolina there. Like, there's a lot of talent. And, hopefully, I hope for his sake, I hope Anthony Richardson doesn't come out this year. I know you're a fan of his, obviously, being a fan of the Gators. But if he can get polished, if he can clean up some of these little things, I mean, he's got all the talent in the world, but he's just got a lot of that nuance. But he could end up being a superstar if he gets all that cleaned up.
Yeah, you and I believe it was a couple weeks ago, you and I talked about him, and both of us feel like he should stay one more year. I mean, even though he's eligible this year, after the Utah game, I mean, his stock just went through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And started seeing some of the flaws again. If he stays, you could see in a very shorter period of time the Hendon Hooker ascend. Where 2 years ago, Hendon Hooker was like, whatever.
Nobody.
That dude is horrible.
Yeah.
And then he gets into the system, gets with the right playmakers around him, has a little bit of seasoning. They threw the salt, pepper on him, and then they just doused him with some great barbecue rub, and all of a sudden, boom, here he is.
Yep. Yep. 100%. 100%. Yeah. So I'm with you though. The 24 class is looking like a good class as well. Looks very solid all the way around. No real holes. I mean, you even look at Brock Bowers from Georgia, looking like a legitimate tight end there. So there's a lot of playmakers in the 24 class. So I'm with you. One of my biggest rebuilds, I not only invested in the 23 class where I've 7 first-round picks right now, but I have 5 first-round picks in 24 as well. So, trying to make sure that I get some good capital in both classes to really help set myself up for long-term success. Because sometimes you put so much stock into one class, and if for some reason that class bottoms out, it can be tough. A lot of times in my rebuilds, I like to have 2 years worth of lots of assets to really help that rebuild flourish. Yeah,
it's something Andrew said a little bit ago that and I know this is almost like, analyst cliche, or, we try to continue to build draft capital, continue to pick up them seconds, them thirds, them fourths. Not saying you have to use them in the sense of drafting somebody. You can always, if you want to go pick up, for instance, a Nick Chubb to put you over the edge, you throw a player plus a third that you picked up because you sold somebody 2 years ago,
right,
for that third. You don't have to use that as picking somebody. You're using it as, a trade piece. So, you pick up as much. If somebody's willing to give it up, give it, take it.
Well, and that's the beautiful part about draft capital, because over time, players carry a lot of risk, right? You invested a bunch in Jonathan Taylor this year. Well, that stock is down quite a bit. Still has value, but it's down quite a bit. If you invested in Jamar Chase, even though he's had a solid season overall, he's injured right now, so you can't use him. He doesn't help your team at the moment. Draft picks can't get hurt. Draft picks don't lose value. Draft picks only ascend in value as you get closer and closer to the draft. So they're a great mover of assets and pieces, because you have that draft capital to say, you know what, I'm going to give this to you. It's only going to accrue in value. And somebody's like, okay, yeah, because I'm excited about this upcoming class. And then all of a sudden, when you're a contender, you can deal that for, you mentioned Nick Chubb is a great one. You can move that for Alvin Kamara. You can move that for a receiver you need. You can move that for whoever that might be a little bit older, but will help put you over the top that year to win a championship.
Right on. Yeah. I mean, it's currency. You're using it as currency. That's all it is.
Yep. 100%. 100%. What do you think, real quick, before we get Dennis Bennett on here? I mentioned Tua a little bit ago. You're in Florida there. You are in Florida, right? You're in Georgia, actually.
Georgia, yeah.
That's right. I realized as I said that, I was like, no, he's actually in Georgia. He's a Florida fan now. Okay, but you're close by. What are your thoughts on Tua so far? Because this offense is playing well. He's putting up huge numbers. Do you believe in Tua in this offense? Are you still skeptical? What are your thoughts on him?
So 4 weeks ago, whatever it was, when we saw the horrific injury on Thursday night, I was completely out.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he should just hang him up, live your life kind of thing. Last 2 weeks, he's come back with a vengeance.
Yeah.
And Miami is going all in. And he looks phenomenal.
Yeah.
I was not that high on Tua coming out of college when he come out of Alabama. I just wasn't. I mean, I didn't see a pro quarterback. I saw a very good thrower, but I didn't see somebody that was going to last in the league that long. Of course, I say the same thing about Kyler Murray as well, with their size and everything else. However, with the offensive line that they have built in Miami to protect him,
mm-hmm.
the weapons they put around him, he doesn't have to hold the ball for more than a couple seconds.
Yeah, and he just gets it out.
And he's got 12 people to throw it to, and there's only 11 on the field. You know what I mean? Including himself. He's got so many weapons.
He really
and
does.
They keep adding. So, no, I like I said, 3-4 weeks ago, out on Tua. Today, all in. I pulled off a trade the other day. I was trying to get Tua because I have Waddle on one of my teams. And the league mate would not give up Tua, so he gave me Dak Prescott and Gallup. So I ended up with that stack. I don't think I gave up that much for him. I'd have to look up and see. Actually, it's right here. So let me see what I gave up for him. There it is. I gave up. All right. So this is this is one of my contending rosters here. I gave up Trevor Lawrence, Rondale Moore, and a 23 third for Prescott and Gallup.
Okay.
Give you an idea, like I said a minute ago, I look at not just my record, because my record in this league is 4-4.
Okay.
I look at myself as a contender because when I look at overall points, where'd they go? Here we go. I have 1277 right now.
Mm-hmm.
Next closest, I am leading in points.
Okay.
The next closest is 1275, and it is actually the person I just traded with, and he's 1-7.
Wow. So you guys have had some really bad luck overall in your leagues. You should be two of the top, if not the two top teams, and combined, you guys only
Right.
have 5 wins.
Correct. But that's why I'm considering myself a contender, because I'm looking at the points. I have evidently, in my mind, played the toughest schedule to this point.
Sure.
So I should have the easiest schedule in the back half. Oh, look at here. Here's Dennis. Dennis the man. But I should have the easiest.
Absolutely. All right, Gator. Well, I'm going to talk to Dennis for a little bit. Once again, national treasure. Thanks for coming on, buddy.
Thank you, sir. Dennis, you have a great night. Garrett, I love you, boy. Be good.
Good to see you, man.
Love you, buddy. We'll see you. Dennis, how's it going, man?
Man, I am having a fantastic night.
Really? And why is that?
Because I choose to. I have a fantastic night every night.
Look at that
Circumstances
positivity.
aside, I just love being alive.
Man, look at that. We need to bottle that up for some of these people around here, because we got some sour pusses and some grouchy people. But Dennis, I will agree with that. You seem to always be just in a good mood, man.
You know, you ever lived in a car in Ohio in the winter? I have.
Well,
it was a long time ago, but I did. And I remember that shit.
Yeah.
And now, like, I wake up in a nice warm house and a bed. Man, I got it made now.
Life is good. Life is good. Dennis, that's why you're the best, man. Well, Dennis, often you and I will talk either the day before or the day of the show, and, send some different topics and things like that. And I'll tell you what we're talking about today. Before I even had a chance to, you're like, here's some of my thoughts for tonight. And this was a good list of different questions and different things. So Dennis, I'm gonna flip the role a little bit, and I'm gonna let you take it, because I thought you had some good questions, some good thoughts. So I'm gonna let you lead things here and direct this as you go on, as we're on here.
So what I thought is I wanted to talk about the dynasty impact of the trade deadline.
Okay.
Like, not only the trades that were made, but the trades that were not made. So there were some, like, TJ Hawkinson was a big one in division. Honestly, I felt like Detroit maybe took a discount. They only got it. They got a second and a conditional fifth, gave up Hawkinson and a third and a conditional fourth and fifth. I had it right there. Let's see. They gave up a third and a conditional 24 fourth. But when I was, first off, that rains on the Irv Smith parade.
Sure.
We can write off Irv Smith. Minnesota has said, dude, we like what you do, but you can't stay healthy.
You got hurt one too many times.
At best, you're just going to be the backup.
Yeah.
So they got Hawkinson. Hawkinson's bigger. That's the downside with Irv. Great body control, great athlete, but he's 6'3", 239. He's not a traditional tight end.
Right.
And there's definitely a place for those guys. Juwan Johnson is probably the newest one. He's 6'3", 235. Looks good with the ball in his hand, but he's going to have to learn how to block. So Hawkinson goes to Minnesota. My concern is, where's he going to fall on the target list? Obviously Jefferson, Amon-Ra, St. Brown, very comparable.
Right.
Adam Thielen, I think he's better than anybody else on Detroit right now.
Right.
KJ Osborne, as good, maybe better than any other wide receiver on Detroit right now.
I mean, I think he's comparable to Josh Reynolds.
Yeah, maybe. But when I was looking at it, so Hawkinson is tight end 4 on the season right now.
Right.
And the last year, Zach Ertz was the tight end 4. Ertz put up 70 catches, 800 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Last year, Conklin in Minnesota, with Irv getting hurt last year, Conklin had the job to himself. He put up 61, 603, and that was like tight end 14, I think. So there was quite a lot. There's quite a gap there. Now, I'm not saying Conklin is as good as Hawkinson.
Right.
Hawkinson, I think, is better. Conklin, older, not quite as established as a
Sure.
receiving threat as
More of a
Hawkinson.
journeyman guy. Yeah.
Exactly. So, but Hawkinson in Dynasty right now, if you're looking to sell, like tight ends can have a much longer shelf life than running backs. Hawkinson, you can probably get a mid first for him right now, in a tight end premium league.
Yeah.
Somebody that's looking, especially if you can sell the concept that Minnesota is more of a pass happy offense. The reality is to date, they're not that much more pass happy than Detroit. It's only like 16 attempts difference.
Right.
But the target share is about 18.8% for Minnesota's tight ends, 20% for Detroit's tight ends.
Okay.
But there's a little bit higher volume in the passing game in general. So Hawkinson is a good target. If you need to secure a tight end, he's probably going to be a tight end, top 7 tight end.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a set it and forget it if you're trying to win, and if you're rebuilding, it's a great tool to go get a first round pick. Find somebody. If you can find a contender that at some point bought somebody's first round pick and they've got that 206 or 106, excuse me, then Hawkinson is a perfect buy for them, unless they've got like Kelsey or Andrews or something.
Well, let me ask you this, because this is something that's a little bit different than what we normally see. Most teams that have established or at least semi-established tight ends, we don't see a lot of those guys get traded. Like, that happens very rarely. We see it a lot more at running back or wide receiver. But if you think through a lot of the main tight ends, especially that are young in their prime, this is a little bit uncharted. I'm trying to remember the last guy, because obviously Zach Ertz was traded, but he was at the tail end of his career,
Right.
and he wasn't the same Zach Ertz he was back in 2015. Whereas with Hawkinson, I mean, he's in his 4th season. I can't think of another young tight end in their first contract that has potential that Hawkinson does. I know it hasn't been realized yet. Is this an indictment on Hawkinson, or is it just the Vikings liked him so much that they wanted to add him to their team? Like, which side of that coin are you on?
Well, I think Detroit, I think it was more of Detroit saying, we know that we're rebuilding, and we know, we feel okay with Brock Wright and James Mitchell, and maybe we'll get a higher end tight end through the draft somewhere along the line. But we know we need to commit significant resources to our defense. With their offensive line and their skill position players, Jared Goff can win you games. He can get you to the Super Bowl. He did it with the Rams. And basically, if you can keep him clean, he can make plays. But their defense has to take care of business, and their defense is awful. They know they need lots of help on the defense. So they used one of their biggest assets that at a relative position of strength for them.
Mm-hmm.
They know they're going to get Jamison Williams to go along with Amon-Ra St. Brown. They know they can. Josh Reynolds is a really good third wide receiver. Being forced to play as a wide receiver too doesn't help him. It helps, people who have him for depth in fantasy, but in real life football, not so much. So they know that they have, but their offensive line is really, really good. Jamal Williams is really good. And DeAndre Swift, if he can ever stay healthy, we've seen so much ability out of him. So they can be serviceable at tight end. They don't need a stud at tight end, because their other positions have a lot of talent, but they have to rebuild the offense. So getting a second round pick helps them out. And, a lot of this new analytics GM type thing trading within division isn't the taboo that it used to be. They're
That's
like,
true. It was a big surprise to see that happen within division. That's pretty rare, but you're right. I think there's GMs that are less worried about. Real quick, I do want to give an update. It's not a surprise. Eagles ended up winning this game. Houston kept trying to come back. Pierce with a big game, 139 yards, but they just didn't quite have the ammo. You wonder if Brandon Cooks had been there, if Nico Collins had been there, if it might have turned out a little bit differently. But you got to give some credit to Mills. He's just doing his best to make something happen there. But obviously, they were just outpowered by the Eagles. The Eagles moved to 8-0. And then quick World Series update. The Astros are up in the top of the 8th, 3-1 over Philly. So I know most people are rooting for Philly there. So a big game 5 could really turn the tide either way. So we'll keep an eye on that as we're finishing up tonight. All right, go ahead, Dennis. Sorry about that.
And Houston fought hard in that game. Mills is kind of dollar store Jared Goff. He needs to be kept really, really clean. But going into the season, I thought Mills deserved a shot.
Mm-hmm.
Through 8 games, though, I think they need to draft a quarterback,
especially in the spot they're in.
Yeah.
If they had won, if they were at 3 wins, 4 wins right now, and they were kind of out of the running for Stroud and Young, then I might have said, you know what, give the guy one more year and let's see what they got. But at this point, if you're going to be picking in the top 5, which seems to be all but a guarantee at this point that they're going to be picking in the top 5, I agree with you. But there might be another team that gives Davis Mills a shot.
Yeah.
There's plenty of teams that need a quarterback, and I think he's shown to be, a serviceable quarterback.
Yeah, I think he's one of these guys that I think is a really good number 2.
Sure.
He can come in.
I just actually took a really good number 2 right before I came on.
Well, I'm glad you got it out of the way.
Yeah.
But if he can go in and he can hold down the fort for a couple games.
Yeah.
But he's not going to win you games. And I hate to say, well, he's not going to lose you games, because he does make some questionable throws and he may very well lose you some games.
Well, part of that is because he's trying to force something with a team that just is so devoid of talent, especially at the receiver position, at the skill positions. It's just completely devoid of talent. So sometimes you kind of have to play a little bit of hero ball, and it's worked for him sometimes when there's been a lot of times that it hasn't worked. But I'd be curious to see with, a steady offensive line, some playmakers. I'd be curious to see how he does.
Yeah, I think, he needs everything to be right around him.
Mm-hmm.
I think he gives a valiant effort. Damian Pierce, though.
He's playing well. 27 carries, which is a lot of carries, 139 yards. Week in, week out, he's been pretty steady Eddie. That's for sure.
Interesting. He didn't get a single target, though.
I didn't realize that. You're correct, though. Not a single target. Goddard, though, talking about targets. He pulled in 8 receptions today, 100 yards and a tutty.
If you put him in your captain spot, that's paying off.
Oof, looking pretty good. All right, Dennis, so, what other trades did you want to break down?
Well, let's take a look at Calvin Ridley.
I mean,
that was a surprise. What they get a conditional 5th and a conditional 4th for Calvin Ridley.
That could turn into a second, depending on
the conditions.
The conditions, exactly. That was not a name I expected to be on the trade block this deadline, because I didn't know anybody that would try to get him, because there's just so many question marks around Calvin Ridley right now. But I think if he can return close to form, I've heard some people say that they don't like this for him. I actually like this move for Calvin Ridley, because you're going from a team that, one, right now their starting quarterback is Marcus Mariota. I don't know that that's going to continue to be true, but they've won enough games that he might hold on for another year. We'll see. Right. They've kind of put themselves out of the running for those top quarterbacks. So we could see that, but they're not throwing the football at all. I mean, less than Justin Fields as of recently. They're just not throwing the football. So, and on top of that, there's a good chance he's the third option in the passing game behind Pitts and Drake London when they come back. So you go to one of the lowest passing offenses that you might be the third option on. Like,
Right.
how is he going to be relevant there? He goes to the Jaguars, a quarterback upgrade in the sense of there's potential. You're going to throw the ball a little bit more. And I mean, his biggest
Probably the
competition.
1A.
Yeah. I mean, it's Christian
Kirk is
Kirk.
the 1B. You know, I think Kirk has performed well, but I do think Ridley would be the top dog there.
I agree. So I think this is good for him.
Yeah, I love it for Ridley. It just comes down to, you know, the antiquated rules around gambling in the NFL. And I get, you know, you don't want people throwing games and stuff, but, you know, I mean, I think gambling's the new marijuana. So eventually they'll be like, we're going to stop testing. You know, there's enough, you know, there's enough NFL police, I think, to keep track of that stuff. And it's not like the NFL is cash strapped. So, you know, they can put some people to work. You know, you have to register your DraftKings ID with the NFL and, you know, all that fun shit.
Yeah, that's not a bad thought. I hadn't thought about that.
You know, I just think that, you know, they're outperforming, I think, is, you know, they're not a great team yet. I think they're outperforming what the expectations, at least what my expectations were for them. I didn't expect them to be very good this year. And so they have some moments where they do look pretty good. Travis Etienne has started to come on and take over.
Yeah, he's played well.
They need to continue to build. They're putting pieces together on that team. And as long as Trevor Lawrence continues to develop, you know, he makes some mistakes still. But I think that getting him weapons is a good thing for that team. I think Doug Peterson will continue to be good for him and good for that team as far as the offense goes. I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to get them to the Super Bowl here soon, but you know, there were dark days in Jacksonville last year. And you know, I think Ridley, if I can still go out and try to acquire Ridley in Dynasty, you know, I think there are still people out there that don't believe he's going to make it back because, one, he's a little bit older as a wide receiver. He's 27 now already, something there. And he kind of, I don't want to say he took the news poorly that he was being suspended. It was more like he was like, really, for this, for playing a game on one of our sponsors.
Yeah.
You're going to suspend me for a year. Okay. So, you know, so I think he's going to be back. I think he'll be back next year. And so if I can go and pop off a second round pick and somebody that's like, well, a little nervous, especially if you've got a contender who's sitting on Ridley, you might be able to ship off a veteran and to help them compete now. Send off Keenan Allen for Ridley and a third, something like that. I guess Keenan's a bad example because he's been injured.
Yeah,
but that type of player. But yeah, I like that a lot. The next one, you know, Chase Claypool. That was a little bit, I don't want to say off guard, but I don't know if that's where Chicago's resources needed to be focused yet. I think it'll be good for Justin Fields, but I don't know if it's good for building the team. Where is his? Let's see. He's got one more year left on his contract at $1.5 million, so he's dirt cheap.
Right.
But if you don't re-sign him, basically this offseason, if you don't extend him, you know, then
it's a waste.
You're looking at having to franchise tag him to keep him probably.
Or I think they're going to work something out. I would be surprised if they didn't assume that they were going to be able to work something out with giving up a second round pick. That's a lot. That's a lot to give up. And you're right. It's a team that has a lot of holes, has a lot of needs. But for fantasy purposes, if they want to neglect their defense, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Just keep scoring points, get the ball back to your offense quickly, and go score more points.
So this season, Chicago's wide receiver 1 is getting 27.5% of the targets.
Mhm.
Well, sounds great until you realize they're on pace to only throw the ball 340 times. Last year the low water mark was 494 was the lowest team. And so if I rounded it to 500. So that 27.5% at 500 is 137 targets.
Right.
So next year, if Justin Fields is looking better, he seems to be improving each week, and he's QB 11 going into week 9.
And he's been crushing the past 4 weeks.
Yep.
Crushing. He
So
started slow, but he's played really well the past 4 weeks.
the volume is still pretty low. It's only, I think, as high as 25 passes, but the last 4 weeks he's been between, I think, 21 and 25, right around there. So if he starts to get up to 28, 29, 30 passes a game, and having another weapon like Claypool may do it. The second wide receiver on the Bears is getting only 14.5%. So that would only be 72 targets on 500 attempts. But, that's probably why if you got a pretty good conversion rate, that's a flex-worthy player.
Yeah.
But I also feel like there's a good chance that distribution between the 1 and 2, if it's Claypool and Mooney, it's going to balance out a little bit. It'll probably be, both of them be closer to 100 targets. And I think Claypool and Mooney are really good complements to each other in style.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
And so we may be looking at, a second half surge by the Bears, and, not that they're going to go out and, peel off 7 wins in a row or anything, but they just need to compete.
Mhm.
And they need to not make mistakes to put themselves in a position to grow. I think Elberflus and Getsy are starting to come around. Getsy the last few weeks has finally caught on to, hey, this guy actually does this stuff in my playbook good, not this other stuff I was doing the first 4 games.
Sure. Well, and we used to see that a lot more often, where they would bring on the quarterbacks more slowly. They would run the ball a lot, and then they'd give them more. We haven't seen that as much in recent years. It's usually, all right, here's the reins, kid, see what you can do, and they let them throw 40 times a game. But this is more of an old school approach to developing a quarterback, and it seems to be working. It seems like he's getting better. Seems like he's getting more comfortable in the offense, and so I don't have any issue with it. I think one of the biggest ones. Well, before I move on to that, we debated on Dynasty Nerds. Would you give up an early second for Chase Claypool? Yes or no?
I feel like his value is more of a mid-second.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are times when I'm looking at a deal and it's like, well, the difference between the 206 and the 202, am I going to let that be a deal breaker? And sometimes it's yes, and sometimes it's no, because I'm a moody bitch sometimes. And you catch me on the right day and I'm like, yeah, I'll do that.
I want that sound clip. I want that sound clip, please. Like, whoever can get that for me, I will pay you.
I think that by the end of the season, it could be a real value to have spent the 202 for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's paying it now. It's like Rich always says, the deal I make now might look like an overpay, but in 3 months, or next year, it's going to look great. And I think that may be the case with Claypool. The big concern is if Fields doesn't continue to grow, if he caps out and they only throw the ball 400 times or 440 times, the passing volume stays so historically low that it just ends up being they can only support one guy. In some weeks it's Claypool, in some weeks it's Mooney, and you never know. You're playing wide receiver roulette, trying to hit the right one. You know, that could end up being problematic. But right now, I mean, I'm more likely probably 70% of the time to not spend the early second than I am to do it. But you catch me at the right time and I'm feeling great. You know, I may be like, and some of it too is team dependent. If my team, if I feel like my team is pretty good and I'm looking at Claypool as say my wide receiver 3 and I'm, the fourth team in the league, then I may be a lot more inclined to say, oh, I'll give up this early second that I traded for because I feel like I can compete this year pretty good versus looking at somebody who's getting ready to go into their third or fourth year and seems to have declined every year in Pittsburgh.
Right.
And now he's been traded away, fool me once, shame on me. Now I'm looking at this trend and to see, is he going to bucket? Does he have the ability to turn the tide? Maybe. Sometimes you gamble on that and lose. Sometimes you hit it right. So, like I said, about 70% of the time, I'm probably going to pass on the 202, 206, 207, probably going for it pretty comfortably.
Makes perfect sense. Let's get one more of these trades in here before we get you out of here and move on to our last segment. So what's the last one you want to touch on, Dennis?
Well, I kind of want to touch on one that didn't get made, and that's Kareem Hunt.
All right.
So I know Hunt's having a decent year. He's RB24 on the season. Chubb is, I think, RB4. So they're both being productive. But we also know Hunt has so much more capacity.
For sure.
And I don't know what's going to happen when Deshaun Watson comes back. Maybe the offense grows by 30%, and now Hunt's RB13 again instead of RB24.
Sure.
But he's in the last year of his deal. I don't think they're going to re-sign him. I think they believe enough into Ernest Johnson and Jerome Ford, and if they need to bring in another veteran to have a more veteran presence, I think they will because Nick Chubb is the guy that's going to stay here. So where does Kareem Hunt go next year? He's going to be 29 years old next August. So going into the year, he's going to be 29. But he spent the last 3 years playing second fiddle after being the guy in Kansas City.
Right.
And we saw in Kansas City, he's clearly talented enough to be the guy.
Right.
But now he's 29. Like, how much is a team going to pay when you've got, Bijan Robinson and Sean Tucker and Jahmyr Gibbs, these guys coming into the league next year?
I think what we're going to end up seeing with him is I don't think he's going to get a backfield. I think it's going to be another timeshare. Now, he might be on the, the positive side of the timeshare. Yeah, he might be the A. But even then, I don't see a situation where he's getting more than 12 touches a game, at most 15 on average. Like, obviously there's weird weeks where guys have huge spikes in numbers, but I think we're looking at a 12 to 15 touch guy for the rest of his career. Now, on a baller offense, 12 to 15 touches is plenty.
Right.
On an anemic offense, that's not even close. So I think that'll be another part of it. Does he get on a legitimate contender, or does he take one final paycheck at the end of his career? I think that's what we're going to have to wait and see.
It's wild because these guys want to win and they want to get paid. And when I took a look through the teams and just to see like who do I really think is in a position to bring on a veteran running back. I could see Tampa Bay bringing him in, but Brady's probably going to be done. So Fournette's probably going to be done. I don't know what's going to happen there. It seems like Todd Bowles is not.
It's not working out great so far.
Being as successful as one might have thought. Kansas City. I know they drafted Pacheco. They got CEH, and they didn't pick up the option there. Jerick McKinnon. And I know that Hunt was unceremoniously booted out of KC, So I don't think they would, but I mean, he's the perfect back for that offense. I mean,
Yeah.
we've seen it. He could go in there as the A and really crush. Carolina, what are they going to do? You know, I like what Foreman's doing. Hubbard, the one game he was healthy, looked good.
Right.
You know, I don't think Blackshear is really anything more than probably a special teams guy.
Right. I'm with you.
But if they were to bring in a quarterback and then add Kareem Hunt, that would be a really good fit. But Miami would be a great fit. Mostert is a free agent. Jeff Wilson is a free agent. Myles Gaskin and Salvon Ahmed are not the guys. And if he went to Miami, they're competing. He'd probably end up with 15 touches a game. You know, probably a little bit more there than maybe some other situations. You know, that to me, that's like the best scenario would be going there. I think the way he runs would really fit that team. He's a fantastic pass catcher. And I just feel pretty confident that he's not coming back to Cleveland. I mean, you never say never, especially
Right. But I'm with you, though. I don't think that's the likely landing spot for him.
If Watson comes in and they reel off a bunch of wins to finish the season and they feel like they're going to be a contender next year, you know, guys want to win. And you know, maybe he's like, you know, it's right up the road from where I'm from. It could happen. There's more than a non-zero. There's more than a 0% chance of it. But you know, I was really surprised they didn't move him. I felt like Cleveland was in a position with their running back depth that Andrew Berry would go, oh, I want to add some more draft capital for next year to continue to grow this team. And he didn't for whatever reason. I guess they didn't get an offer that they liked, but
yeah, it sounded like they needed to get that fourth, and nobody was quite willing to part with a pick that high. So it sounded like they just kind of sat pat, and they're going to wait and see what happens this season. And the Browns are still not out of it, but they got a long road ahead, and they're going to have to do a couple good things still without Watson being back. So we'll kind of have to wait and see. Dennis, anything else you want to tell the good folks here? Remind them where to find you, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, check me out on Twitter, culture_coach, coach, not couch, culture_coach. Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast. I'm here about every other Thursday, sometimes more. You can find me on other shows on the network too. Pop in and out. What else? Oh, that's it for now. I should probably write up a formal bio.
There you go. All right, Dennis. Well, thanks for coming on, buddy.
Peace out.
All right. Well, that was Dennis Bennett, the man himself. We get him on here all the time because he's fantastic and the people love him. So we are going to now take a break, assuming everything works. No more technical difficulties. We're going to take a break now, and we'll be getting back in a little bit and detouring a tiny bit and talk maybe a little bit of baseball here. This World Series game is heating up.
The Playbook with Fensty and Ronis, presented by FantasyAlarm.com.
The only person, I've said this to you before, who I believe back then, of all those power hitters who truly was clean, Ken Griffey Jr.
I mean, I think so when he got hurt.
Body didn't change.
We'll never know that for sure either.
No, dude.
We've seen guys who were not big take substances.
That's true.
To get busted. So it's not about that, always.
I hear you. It's just, don't you think with the way his career kind of went, you would think that he didn't take anything?
I don't think he did, but we'll never know 100%.
I'm going to keep telling myself that he didn't. The 1 year player, I mean, he's my favorite baseball player of all time. In the 1990s, Ron, as a kid, as a 5-year-old kid who plays video games and collected cards, there was no one cooler than Ken Griffey Jr. I still wear my hat backwards because Ken Griffey Jr. did it and he looked really cool doing that, wearing a backwards baseball cap. Like, he made everything the guy did looked cool. Even the home run in the movie Little Big League, it's acting, it's all, I guess, fake, but even he made that look cool. I mean, Ken Griffey Jr., you're a little bit older than me, but in the 90s, was there besides Michael Jordan, was there a more loved athlete than Ken Griffey Jr.?
Yeah, no, I love Griffey. He's one of my favorite players ever, from defensively to hitting his swing. And yeah, I would have loved to see what he could have done if he had stayed healthy, the final numbers he'd finished with. So no, I was a huge fan of Ken Griffey, and it's a shame though that all those injuries towards the end of his career just really limited the production he could put up, but he still put up elite numbers. He was so fun to watch. So I'm a huge Ken Griffey guy.
And here's the other thing, too. So 1994, the season got shortened because of the strike.
And he finished with 40 homers in 111 games that year, man. And then he had 56 2 years in a row, 97 and 98, and then 48. He had a stretch 4 years in a row, 49, 56, 56, 48, 40. I mean, unbelievable. And then, yeah, once he hit like 31, he started to miss games, 111, 70, 53, 83. So think about that, all those years that he lost, and he still hit 630 home runs, man. Yeah. So if he was clean, he would have been the all-time home run champion. Again, we're all guessing here, but you would think, all right, well, once he got into age 31, 32, that's when the body started breaking out, which is typical, right, for someone who's not using anything, whereas we saw Barry Bonds just get better with age, and we did not see that with Griffey. So look 2001, where he's 30 when he played on. Look at the home runs decline. 8, 13, 20, 35, 27, 30, 18, 15 to his age 38 season. Even age 39 in 170 games, he had 19 home runs. So he probably would have definitely been the all-time home run leader had he been able to stay healthy.
Better Sports Network. It's sports talk done better.
Hurts takes the snap, backs up, he looks, fires, strike. He's got a first down at the 40 to Dallas Goedert. He's got it at the 40-yard line of the Texans. Dallas Goedert was right there, and Hurts fired a bullseye.
Dynasty Nerds.
All right, we are back. Normally, we're only talking football, and we had the Thursday night game. Philadelphia, not surprisingly, ended up winning. It was a closer game than we would have thought at halftime, but they ended up winning 29-17. But the real intrigue right now is in Major League Baseball. We have the Phillies down 3-2 in the bottom of the 8th inning. Was 3-1. They picked up a run. There's runners on first and third with Kyle Schwarber at the plate. Now, Kyle Schwarber is a guy that does strike out a lot, and Ryan Presley's a good pitcher. But Schwarber's also a guy that can hit the ball out of the park. This series would explode. If he could go yard here, put them up 5-3, it would change absolutely everything. So we're going to be keeping an eye on this game. We're still going to talk fantasy football. This is a fantasy football show, but it's the World Series. It's important. We gotta keep an eye on this stuff. So we'll be keeping an eye on this game as we continue to talk about fantasy football. Now, on and off, I've touched on the quarterback position a few different times tonight. Oh, wow. Laser line drive or ground ball to the first baseman. Almost foul. I want to see the replay on that. Wow. He knocked it down. Mancini knocked it down out at first. Had he not been so close to the line, there's no way he makes that play. That was a great play by Mancini. Wow. That was at least one run, if not two. Fantastic play by Mancini there. But let's go to the quarterback position. We talked about Justin Fields a little bit with Dennis Bennett. Over the past 3 weeks, he has been 7th, 5th, and 3rd overall in quarterback points. So he is looking like now the most valuable quarterback in that class, bar none. I think he's the top guy. I know Lawrence still has the pedigree, the number 1 overall pick, all of that stuff. But the rest of the class, I mean, Trey Lance has been hurt. We've had Mac Jones. That it's a little bit of a controversy between him and Bailey Zappi. And Zach Wilson, he's had more misses than hits. Let's put it that way. He's had more misses than hits lately. There's still, all of these guys, there's still time. None of them are dead in the water just yet. But it's looking like Justin Fields might be that guy. But let's move on to two other quarterbacks. And both of these quarterbacks that I do want to touch on, because I want to talk about their fantasy value. And for guys that are in here now, if I haven't heard from you yet, early on in the show, I did talk about if there were 3 players that you could add to your dynasty team. Now, we'll say it's a startup, okay? Not one quarterback league, not named Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. What 3 players are you taking? Go ahead and put that in the chat because I'm really curious to see. I did it on Twitter. Results were all over the place. Very curious how people would respond to this. But going back to the quarterback, PJ Walker. PJ Walker was a name that we heard a few years ago, a guy that was in the XFL, played well, and got this opportunity partly because of Andrew Luck, got this opportunity, and he's the starting quarterback right now. Baker's healthy. Baker has a chance to play. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. PJ Walker has done enough to keep the job. He beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, was so close to beating the Atlanta Falcons. That beautiful Hail Mary to DJ Moore was amazing. What do we do with PJ Walker now? Because him, similar to another guy I'm about to talk about, is somebody that wasn't really on anyone's radar to have a legitimate job in this league. Long-term backup, sure, but not to have a legitimate job in this league. And the Carolina Panthers, only at 2 wins, could be in the range to take a quarterback. We'll see how the rest of the year plays out. But with how competitive they've looked with PJ Walker, if they get to 6-7 wins, they're not going to be in a range to take one of those top quarterbacks anymore. Do you keep rolling with PJ Walker and use that draft capital to address that offensive line, to address some defensive needs, to, whatever it is? They could end up going that route. PJ Walker, an interesting quarterback. I'm not sold he's the guy, but if I can get him on the cheap in a super flex, if I can get him for a second round pick, I'm taking that gamble. I'll take that gamble. Jackson Jigsaw says in the dynasty question, he said Allen, Diggs, and AJ Brown. So 2 wide receivers and the quarterback Josh Allen. Little older receiver. I'm surprised on Diggs, but he's playing so well. I can't blame him one bit. Gator said he answered on Twitter, but he'll do it again. Allen. So we see Allen again, another quarterback, Waddle and Olave. So going with the young receivers, Olave was a name I didn't see a lot, but with his youth and his production so far, can't blame you one bit there. And then Edward said he'll take Kenneth Walker and A.J. Brown and Saquon Barkley. So 2 running backs there, and then A.J. Brown at wide receiver. So speaking of Kenneth Walker, let's talk about Geno Smith. Wow. I for one, thought it was a really fun story. He gets to play against Russell Wilson to start the year. He goes head-to-head against Russell Wilson, and doggone it, he beats him. Man, that's a cool story. Can't wait for them to win 2 more games the rest of the year, have one of the top picks, draft a quarterback. Geno Smith is playing like the real deal. You look at the QBR, you look at the wins, you look at any statistic, any metric, anything you want. Geno's done it. And this is a player that we had high hopes for. Now, typically when we're saying a guy bounces back, we're talking about a year or 2 later. No, we're talking about somebody that was drafted, I want to say it was 2011. 2011? Oof. We're just now seeing this career resurgence. You know who it reminds me of? It reminds me of Rich Gannon. Yeah, I know that's going back a little ways. Going back to like 2002 when he was in the Super Bowl against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But that's the kind of thing we're seeing. A guy that journeyman, backup player, has the opportunity. 2013, the producer said, thank you. I knew it wasn't 2012 because I knew that was the lucky year and the Robert Griffin, the third year. So I couldn't remember if it was 1 year before or 1 year after. But either way, a guy in his 30s, we don't normally see this. It's what happened with Rich Gannon. This is kind of what's happening with Geno Smith. And you know what? I'm buying it. I'm in. I think that this is legitimate because we're not looking at a team that is just so good that they're elevating Geno Smith. Because we even saw Russell Wilson struggle at times last year. He said, Garrett, these kids weren't born then. That was a long time ago. To be fair, I was like 12. So I was pretty young then. But I remember watching that Super Bowl. I remember Warren Sapp and Derek Brooks and all of those guys. It was a great defense. John Lynch was there. Hey, I'm 42. I'm a man. Come talk to me. I'm 40. That's funny. But Edward saying he has good offensive weapons, good offensive line for the first time in his career. And the line has played a lot better than expected. But it is still a young, inexperienced line. But part of it is Geno Smith is doing them a lot of favors by getting the ball out quickly. If he's sitting there all day, it doesn't help anything. We've seen that in Cleveland all too often. But he's getting the ball out quick. He's making good decisions. He's putting a ball in a place where his receivers can make plays. And Metcalf and Lockett are still solid players. They're not bad players. You could argue talent-wise, not necessarily production-wise, but talent-wise, you could put DK Metcalf in the top 12 of receivers in the NFL. Maybe somewhere around top 12. That big body, that catching ability, that speed. And Lockett's been nothing but well above average for years. But I think a lot of this has to do with Geno Smith elevating the play of people around him. And Kenneth Walker's been awesome as well. I don't want to take anything away from Kenneth Walker. He has played really, really well. Really, really well. Jackson Jigsaw saying, it's weird. I don't know if Geno is good, amazing, but I do know that he is really exciting. And it is. It's really exciting. Speaking of exciting, the World Series, Jose Altuve up. He's had a good game, 2 for 3 today. 2 runners on, first and second, 1 out in the top of the 9th. So if Philadelphia has any chance of getting back in this, they've got to escape this 9th inning without giving up any runs. So something that we're going to keep an eye out for there. But yes, PJ Walker, Geno Smith, journeyman guys, but guys that you just can't help but root for. I'm not 100% sure on PJ Walker yet, but I'm pretty convinced on Geno Smith. I do think this is legitimate. I do think he's going to be a solid, maybe not great, but I do think he's going to be a solid NFL quarterback for the foreseeable future. For the next 3 to 5 seasons, I think he's going to be a usable, startable fantasy quarterback in super flex leagues. I don't know about 1 QB leagues yet, but I think in super flex leagues, yeah, I'll do that. Edward said, hey, don't forget about Heineke. That's true. Heineke, we've seen this play out a couple different seasons now where different quarterback and they come back to Heineke, different quarterback, come back to Heineke. He always seems to just kind of sneak his way back in, and the kid just keeps winning games. I was kind of hoping to see Sam Howell because I think he has a better chance to be the long-term guy, but Heineke keeps winning games, and I love the tidbit about the Jordans. Every time he beats a team, he takes a little bit there, and Garrett doesn't know what beer tastes like. That's not true. I've had beer before on several occasions, just not regularly. And for me, I'm more of a cider guy. Like if I'm going to drink, I like the ciders a little bit more, but that's just me. It's just me. All right, let's move on here to the last little bit that I do want to talk about. Hold on. Sorry. Something was, let me see my, okay. I think I fixed it. My ear was buzzing. I think was that a double play? Holy cow. Double play. Gets out of the inning. All right. We've got the bottom of the 9th, still 3-2. Third baseman, Alex Bohm. Bohm, am I pronouncing that correctly? I think so. Gets Altuve out at first base. Wow. Fantastic. Fantastic. I really hope Philadelphia can pull this off. Really hope he can pull this off. Edward saying Heavy T is nervous. I bet. All right, last little bit. Always like talking about the rookies. We talked about the 2023 class. Haven't talked much about the rookies. Obviously, with Brees out, missing one of the top players in the class. But one of the big things that I've noticed is we've really seen a bit of a downward turn for a lot of these rookie receivers. This is typically the time of year where we see them start to ascend, but instead, starting to go down a little bit. We still had a good game from Garrett Wilson this week, but a lot of weeks where we're seeing 3 catches for 40 yards, 7 points a game, 9 points a game, 4 points. Like it's been a little bit of a disappointing trend, but we saw a much better game this week. But Drake London not getting the targets that he was early on in the season. They're just not throwing the ball in Atlanta. Jahan Dotson's been hurt. It's really just been Chris Olave. He's really been the only one that has stayed consistent. And part of that has been due to the injuries in the New Orleans Saints wide receiver room. We've been missing Michael Thomas for on and off, several weeks. Now he's going to be out for the season. We've been missing Jarvis Landry quite a bit. So there's really not been anyone else to lean on. And Chris Olave has been fantastic. This past week, let me grab it here. What did he do? They've got the Monday night game this week, playing the Baltimore Ravens, and he's played so well as of late. 5 receptions, 52 yards, no tutties, so not a great game there. But the week before that, 14 targets, 7 receptions, 106 yards. The week before that, 4 receptions for 54 yards and a touchdown. Week before that, 4 receptions, 67 yards and a touchdown. Week before that, 9 receptions, 147 yards. So, I mean, even his down week this week still got you double-digit points. He's playing really, really well. Guys to keep an eye on that could be coming back. We could be getting Treylon Burks back. So I'm not the biggest Treylon Burks guy. I had him pretty low in my nerd score, my rankings, but we could see an ascension from him once he gets back. So that's one guy to keep a name on. It's getting late. I'm getting tired. You can tell. Keep an eye on. Christian Watson. He's been really disappointing. And so far, he's looking like maybe the biggest bust of this class. And part of it is just because he can't seem to stay healthy. I mean, we saw week 1. I mean, he put a guy on skates and had a fantastic route wide open and just dropped it. And that really seemed to set the tone for his season. Hasn't produced, hasn't been able to stay healthy. And Aaron Rodgers just kind of seems over all of it. But all of that being said, there's a lot of guys that are not able to get healthy in Green Bay. At some point, if this team wants any hope for an ascension, they want any hope to get back on the map, they're going to need a guy like Christian Watson to step up. So if you can get him at a discount, I'm not paying anything close to what I paid right off the bat. So, we're looking at a late first. If you can get him for a late, and I mean legitimately late, pick 23, 24, a late second round pick, I would be willing to take that gamble. Will it pay off? I have no clue. He was always one of the biggest boom bust prospects, and I don't think that's changed at all. But we see a lot of receivers that it takes a little bit longer for them to develop. If you're going to take a chance on somebody and you want to give a late second and early third pick, that's the guy that I'd be willing to do it. I'm not paying what I would have paid in the offseason. I won't do it. But if you want to take a gamble, if you want an upside piece, I think he's somebody that I would be willing to take a look at. The tight end position, though, has really started to blossom. We saw Daniel Bellinger look really good most of the season, but he's been out. but Grant Dulcich for the Denver Broncos. Basically, everything that the Broncos have touched has turned to poo, with the exception of Grant Dulcich. Both games since he's been back, he has been a legitimate option in this offense, and he's played really well. Russell Wilson traditionally hadn't done a ton with the tight end. There were some years with Jimmy Graham, but he didn't do a lot there. But Dulcich has played really, really well. So somebody that I'm going to keep my eye on, Greg. Did I not say Greg? What did I say? I probably said some other G name. I can see me doing that. Quick update. Reese Hoskins up at the plate. 1-2 count right now. Still nobody out. Did I say Grant? Oh, my bad. Grant Dulcich. Sounds right though. Grant sounds like it could work. He's playing fantastic. Still keeping an eye on Trey McBride. He hasn't got a ton of playing time with how much Zach Ertz has been playing, but I do still want to keep an eye on him. And then at the quarterback position, we really haven't had anyone to take a look at. Reese Hoskins just struck out for what it's worth. I was hoping this game would wrap up before we got out of here tonight. Does not look like that's going to be the case. So you're going to have to finish it on your own, I think, because we're out of here in just a couple minutes. But tight end is truly a 3-year deal. Absolutely. Quarterback position, Kenny Pickett. I'm just not seeing it. He hasn't looked great so far. And I get it. It's a terrible offensive line in Pittsburgh. But you were hoping for better, right? You were hoping that he was going to be able to get the ball out quickly, you get it to his playmakers. He has not been getting his playmakers involved. He's turning the ball over. He's taking sacks. It's another position that does take time to develop. So I don't want to assume the worst too quickly, but it does not look good so far for Kenny Pickett. Willis got an opportunity to start this past week. Didn't really impress much. Malik Willis with his performance in Tennessee there. I think as soon as Ryan Tannehill is healthy enough, he'll be back. He'll be the guy there. Gator saying, tell Better Boss I'll cover till the end of the baseball game. Gator's going to come on, cover the end of it. No, I think they got a hard out here in like a minute. So they cut me off whether I keep talking or not. They just cut me off, Gator. That's just how it works. All right. But I appreciate all of you guys tuning in. Thursday night football, baseball, all that good stuff. As we're closing, a shot to center field. Oh, off the wall. He caught it off the wall. Oh, my goodness. Almost a home run for Ray Lamuzzo. Appreciate you guys. Find me on Twitter at Dynasty Price. We'll be back next week.